Hi, enjoy listening. Ethan leaned out of the train window as the platform blurred with noise and motion. His friends waved. Some whistled. Some shouted his name. He grinned, lifting a hand in return. For 3 years since returning from military service, he had been stuck in the same routine, working, studying part-time, trying to move forward, but never finding time for himself. This trip wasn't for rest. It was a promise. Tyler and Rachel were about to become parents, and Ethan swore nothing would stop him from being there. Tyler had been like a brother to him since their days in the foster home, and Rachel was the quiet, red-headed girl who had once needed protection from bullies. Now, they had a small house, steady jobs, and a baby on the way. Ethan admired them. Their lives had turned into something stable and full. His, by comparison, felt restless, unfinished. He carried questions that had never left him. Questions about who he was, where he came from, and why he had been left on the steps of a group home at 3 years old. Over the years, he had tried piecing together scraps of memory, shadows of a woman's voice, the warmth of someone's hand, the outline of a man turning away. But the answers slipped like water through his fingers. The only story anyone ever told him came from Grace Bennett, the janitor who worked at the home. Grace had been in her early 50s then, still strong, still quick on her feet. She had told him she saw the man who dropped him off. He was young, maybe 30, she once said, her voice heavy. Looked nervous. No car. He kept pacing by the door. And then there you were, a little boy in winter clothes, shivering. He rang the bell and ran. I tried to catch him, but he was gone. Grace had been the one who later took him in, once he turned 18. No sense in you drifting around until the state finds you a place, she had said. She gave him a small bedroom, home-cooked meals, and a kind of stability he'd never known before. Ethan never forgot that. He also never forgot the strange birthmark across his chest, a pale, flame-shaped mark that stretched from his stomach toward his neck. Doctors said it was harmless, though unusual. Grace used to shake her head and mutter that such marks carried destiny. Ethan laughed it off, but sometimes, late at night, he traced its outline and wondered if it tied him to the past he couldn't reach. As the train rolled out of the station, Ethan settled into his compartment. He had paid extra for a private berth. With work waiting for him as soon as he returned, he needed the rest. His job on high-rise construction sites demanded sharp focus. Mistakes were unforgiving. He changed into a worn tracksuit, tossed his bag on the seat, and was about to lie down when raised voices filtered through the wall. At first, he ignored it. Arguments were common enough on long-distance trains. But then he caught the sound of a woman's sob, an old woman's. Ethan froze. Something in that sound reached into him, as if it carried Grace's voice. He stood, opened his door, and glanced into the corridor. The young attendant hovered nervously by the next compartment. Inside, a man's voice lashed out with cruel precision, words sharp enough to cut. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew that voice, the type, not the man. Authority dripping with contempt. He stepped closer. And in that moment, everything in his life began to shift. The train swayed as Ethan stepped into the corridor. The attendant, A young woman with dark hair pulled into a bun pressed her back to the wall. Her name badge read Anna Rivera. She looked pale, her eyes darting between Ethan and the compartment. Inside, the man's voice thundered again. "Clumsy old bat! Do you have any idea how much this shirt cost? You've ruined it!" A fragile voice tried to explain, trembling. I only brushed your arm when the train moved. I'm sorry, sir. Please forgive me." Ethan didn't wait another second. He pushed the door open. A woman in her 70s sat hunched on the lower bunk, wringing her hands. Across from her stood a broad-shouldered man in an expensive suit, his face flushed with anger. The sight of him berating someone who could have been his own grandmother made Ethan's blood surge. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "Why don't you ease up? She's twice your age. Show some respect." The man turned, startled. He had sharp features, a pointed nose, and cold eyes that measured Ethan in an instant. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he asked, his voice dripping authority. "One phone call, and you'll regret opening that mouth." Ethan didn't flinch. "Doesn't matter who you are. Broken jaws look the same on everyone." For a moment, silence filled the compartment. The old woman's lips parted, astonished. Anna peeked in from the doorway, clutching her clipboard to her chest. The man, Edward Grant, though Ethan didn't know his name yet, stared, sizing Ethan up. His arrogance faltered, if only slightly. Ethan crouched beside the old woman. "Ma'am, you can take my seat. I'll stay here instead." Her eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded. "Thank you, son." He helped her up and led her toward his compartment. Anna whispered after them, her voice full of relief. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." Ethan gave her a quick nod. "You did enough just standing up to him." Back in his compartment, Ethan settled the woman on his bunk. She murmured blessings under her breath, still shaken. Ethan returned to face the suited man. Edward had sat down, pulling at his collar. His anger seemed to have drained, replaced by something Ethan couldn't place. Unease, maybe even fear. Edward's eyes flicked to Ethan's chest. The zipper of his tracksuit had slipped low, revealing the edge of the pale birthmark. Edward's expression froze. His face went white. "What is that?" he whispered. Ethan looked down. "This? A birthmark. Had it since I was born." "Why?" Edward's lips trembled. He reached up, fumbled with his tie, then yanked open the buttons of his shirt. Across his chest stretched the same mark, identical in shape and colour. The old woman gasped. Anna covered her mouth with both hands. Ethan's pulse hammered. "What the hell is this?" Edward's voice cracked. "I've been searching for you for years. That mark, it proves it. You're my son." The train rocked as the words landed like a blow. Ethan stared, stunned, his hands curling into fists. He wanted to laugh, to deny it, to tear out of the compartment. But deep down, something twisted. The memory of being left on the steps of a foster home. The image of a man running into the night. It was him. "Then you're the one who abandoned me," Ethan said, his voice sharp with rage. Edward's eyes shone with guilt. "Yes, and I have no right to ask, but please, let me explain." Ethan's breath came hard, his chest burning. "For 25 years, He had dreamed of this moment. Not like this. "Talk," Ethan said coldly. "And you better not lie." Edward clasped his hands, his knuckles white. For the first time since Ethan had seen him, his arrogance was gone. He looked small, cornered. "I was 29, Edward began. Ambitious, hungry for recognition. I had married into money, the daughter of a transport company owner. It wasn't love, but it secured my future. Then I met Marianne." Ethan stiffened at the name. It stirred something deep in his memory, a faint echo. "She was unlike anyone I'd known," Edward continued. "Lively, kind, she laughed easily. I didn't deserve her attention, but I took it anyway. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was terrified of losing everything. My position, my marriage, my future. So I left her. I thought walking away was cleaner." Ethan's fists tightened. "Cleaner? You left a woman to raise a kid alone. That kid was me." Edward's voice cracked. "She showed up at my door once. You were with her, a little boy, holding her hand. She looked pale, weak. She told me she had cancer and didn't know if she would survive treatment. She begged me to take you in. But my wife was returning home in an hour, and if she saw Marianne, my life would have imploded. I panicked. I told her to leave." Ethan felt the blood rush to his face. "So you dumped me on the steps of a group home, like trash?" Edward nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. "Yes, I rang the bell and ran. I have hated myself for it every day since." The old woman in Ethan's compartment gasped softly, whispering prayers under her breath. Anna stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes glistening. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "And my mother? Where is she now?" Edward wiped his face. "I told my wife Marianne had died, but she hadn't. Years later, she found me again. She had survived the cancer, thanks to experimental treatment. But the years of fighting left her frail. She asked about you. I told her you were dead. I didn't want her digging into my life." Ethan's chest heaved. "You told her I was dead?" Edward's voice broke. "It was unforgivable, I know. But the last I heard, after suffering a stroke, she was placed in a care facility in this very city. It's been over 10 years. I don't know if she's alive." Ethan pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to block out the swirl of rage, grief, and disbelief crashing inside him. He had lived his whole life wondering about his parents. Now, one sat in front of him, confessing sins that could never be undone. And the other, his mother, might still be alive, within reach. He lowered his hands and glared at Edward. "You think saying all this makes it better? It doesn't. But if there's even a chance my mother's alive, I'll find her. With or without your help." Edward nodded weakly. "I'll tell you everything I know. Please, let me come with you." Ethan stood, his body rigid. "You've done enough. Stay out of my way." He turned to Anna, who straightened under his gaze. "Do you know care homes around here? Ones that have been around at least a decade?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, there's one not far from the station. I've worked this line for years. I can take you there." Ethan exhaled sharply, his decision made. He looked back at Edward one last time. If my mother's alive, she's the only one who matters now. When the train pulled into the station, Ethan was one of the first to step off. The old woman he had defended blessed him once more before being met by her family. Edward trailed behind, but Ethan barely looked at him. His chest still burned from the confession. Anna walked at Ethan's side, her small bag slung across her shoulder. "There's a care facility about 20 minutes from here," she said. "It's been around for decades. If your mother was placed anywhere, that's the one." Ethan nodded. He appreciated her steadiness. Most people would have walked away after witnessing such a scene, but Anna stayed. Edward hurried to catch up. "Please, let me come. If she's alive, I need to see her too." Ethan stopped and faced him. "You've had over 20 years to see her. Now you want to play the grieving ex? No, stay out of this." Edward's lips trembled, but he didn't argue. He lowered his gaze and stepped back as Ethan and Anna walked toward the taxi line. Inside the cab, Ethan pressed his forehead against the glass. The city outside passed in streaks of grey and neon. His mind raced. If his mother was alive, what would she think when she saw him? Would she recognize him? Forgive him for not finding her sooner? Anna broke the silence. "You don't have to do this alone, you know." Ethan looked at her. "You barely know me." "I know enough," she said softly. "I know you stood up for a stranger on that train. I know you've been carrying questions your whole life. That's enough for me." Her words steadied him more than he expected. The taxi pulled up to a modest brick building with a faded sign, Riverside Care Centre. The front lawn was lined with benches and flower beds. A few residents sat outside, bundled in sweaters, watching the world go by. Inside, the reception area smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. A middle-aged nurse looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" Ethan hesitated, his voice catching. "I'm looking for a woman who may have been placed here years ago. Her name is Marianne Parker. She would have come here after a stroke, maybe 10, 12 years ago." The nurse tilted her head, thoughtful. "Marianne Parker. Yes, we have a Marianne. She's been with us for a long time. Lovely woman. But she always said she had no family. Even claimed her son had died." Ethan's breath caught. His knees felt weak. "She's here?" The nurse's expression softened. "Yes. Do you want to see her?" Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Anna touched his arm lightly, grounding him. The nurse stood and motioned for them to follow. "She'll be in the activity room. She likes to knit in the afternoons." Ethan's steps grew heavier as they walked down the corridor. His heart pounded against his ribs, each beat echoing with fear and hope. At the door, the nurse whispered, "She's right there." Inside, a small group of residents sat around a table with yarn and books. At the far end, a slender woman in a wheelchair bent over her knitting. Her hair was silver, her movements slow but deliberate. When she lifted her head, Ethan froze. Her face was older, lined with years of struggle, but her eyes, those eyes, sparked with a recognition he couldn't deny. The yarn slipped from her lap. Her hands trembled. "No," she whispered. I knew you were alive." Ethan's vision blurred as he stepped forward. For the first time in his life, he looked into the eyes of his mother. For a moment, Ethan stood frozen at the doorway. His throat tightened, his body refusing to move. He had dreamed of this moment, But the reality struck harder than he ever imagined. Marianne's hands shook as she struggled to guide her wheelchair closer. Her voice was faint but steady. "I knew it. I told them you weren't gone. A mother knows." Ethan knelt in front of her, his vision blurred with tears he didn't want to shed. Not here, not in front of strangers. Yet when her hand brushed his cheek, the dam broke. "Mum," he whispered, the word foreign and heavy on his tongue. He had never spoken it to anyone before. She cupped his face with trembling fingers, studying him like she was memorizing every detail. "You have my eyes," she said softly, "and your father's stubborn jaw." The mention of Edward sent a jolt through him, but he pushed it aside. Right now, she was all that mattered. Anna lingered in the doorway, quietly wiping her own eyes. The nurse discreetly slipped out, giving them privacy. Ethan took Marianne's hands. They were thin, the veins visible, but warm. Why didn't you come for me? Why didn't you find me?" Marianne's eyes clouded with sorrow. "I tried. After the cancer, I was weak. But when I finally had the strength, I searched everywhere. By the time I found Edward, he told me you had died." Her voice broke. "I thought I lost you forever." Ethan's jaw clenched. He wanted to protect her from the truth, but he couldn't. "He lied. He left me at the foster home. He's the reason we lost all those years." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I should have fought harder. I should never have trusted him." Ethan shook his head. "You were sick. You survived. That's what matters. I'm here now." She pulled his hands to her lips, pressing them against her mouth, as if to convince herself he was real. "You're alive. My boy, you're alive." They stayed like that, locked in silence, time melting away. Finally, Marianne whispered, "Tell me about your life. Everything." Ethan told her pieces. About the foster home, about Grace who had taken him in, about Tyler and Rachel, the family he had made out of brokenness. He told her about the army, about working construction, about the nights he lay awake, wondering where he came from. Marianne listened, eyes never leaving his face. "I am so proud of you," she said, her voice fierce despite its weakness. "No matter what you went through, you became a man of honor." The words filled Ethan with a warmth he had never known. For the first time, he felt whole. But in the back of his mind, another presence lingered. Edward, the man who had betrayed them both and who was now somewhere in this city. Ethan brushed his mother's hair back gently. "Rest now. I'll come tomorrow. We have a lot to make up for." Marianne smiled through her tears. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't waste your life hating him. Hate destroys what it touches. I don't want it to destroy you too." Ethan swallowed hard. He couldn't give her that promise. Not yet. But he nodded. "I'll try." As he stood to leave, Anna gave him a small, encouraging smile. Outside, the evening air was cool, carrying the faint hum of traffic. Ethan felt a strange calm settle over him. He had found her. After all the years of emptiness, he had his mother back. But the shadow of Edward's presence meant the story was far from over. The next morning, Ethan returned to Riverside Care Centre with a bouquet of fresh flowers. Anna had insisted on coming again, saying she could trade her shift with another attendant. He didn't argue. Somehow her presence steadied him. Marianne was waiting in the common room, her knitting needles resting on her lap. When she saw the flowers, her eyes lit up. "For me?" she asked, her voice playful despite the rasp. Ethan smiled. "Of course. Every mother deserves flowers." Her lips trembled as she reached for them. "I never thought I'd hear those words from you," she said. They were still arranging the bouquet in a vase when the doors at the far end of the room opened. Ethan's chest tightened instantly. Edward Grant walked in, dressed in another tailored suit, carrying himself with the same stiff pride, though his eyes darted nervously. Ethan stood at once, blocking his mother's view. "You have no right to be here." Marianne's voice floated behind him, trembling but clear. "Who is it, Ethan?" Ethan's hands curled into fists. He didn't want to wound her with the truth, but lying wasn't an option anymore. He stepped aside. Edward removed his hat, his face pale. "Marianne!" The knitting needles clattered to the floor. Marianne gasped, her hands clutching the arms of her wheelchair. "Edward, after all these years." "I had to see you," Edward said softly. "I had to tell you how sorry I am." Ethan moved closer to his mother. "You don't get to stand here and play the penitent husband. You lied to her. You lied to me. You left us both to rot." Edward's voice shook. "I know. I've carried that guilt every day. But when I saw him on that train," he pointed at Ethan, "it was like fate dragged me to the truth I'd been running from." Marianne's eyes filled with tears. "You told me our son was dead. Do you know what that did to me?" Edward bent his head, his shoulders slumping. "It destroyed us all. I was a coward. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I couldn't die without seeing you both." Ethan's blood boiled. "Don't talk about dying like you're the victim. You're still alive, still standing. The people you left behind paid the price." Anna placed a hand on Ethan's arm, whispering, "Let your mother speak." Marianne studied Edward in silence for a long time. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "You don't get forgiveness from me. Not after what you did. But I will not let hatred poison what little time I have left. Leave this place, Edward. Don't come back." Edward's lips quivered. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. He nodded once, turned, and walked out the door without another word. Ethan crouched beside his mother, his anger still simmering. "If you never want to see him again, I'll make sure of it." Marianne reached for his hand. "What I want is to spend whatever years I have left with you. That's enough for me." Ethan pressed his forehead to her hand, the fight draining from him. For the first time in decades, his mother had chosen him. But deep down, he knew Edward wasn't gone for good. Men like him never walked away so easily. Ethan settled into a routine over the next weeks. Every morning, before heading to the construction site, he stopped at Riverside Care Centre. Some days he brought flowers, other days books or pastries from the corner bakery. Marianne teased him that he spoiled her, but he could see how each gesture lifted her spirits. In the evenings, after work, he returned again. They sat in the garden when the weather was kind, or in the activity room when the chill set in. She told him stories of her childhood, of how she met his father when they were young, and of the dreams she once had of building a home filled with warmth. For the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere. Anna often joined them. She had a natural way of brightening Marianne's mood, making her laugh even on difficult days. Ethan noticed how easily Anna fit into their new rhythm, and though he didn't say it out loud, he was grateful. Still, shadows lingered. One evening, as Ethan walked Marianne back to her room, a nurse handed him a folded piece of paper. "This was left for you at the front desk." Ethan opened it. The handwriting was familiar, firm but shaky at the edges. "Please, meet me. One conversation. I won't bother her again if you say no. The bench by the river, tomorrow at dusk." It was signed, Edward. Ethan crumpled the note in his fist, anger rising. He didn't owe the man a single word. Yet as he tucked his mother into bed, her earlier plea echoed in his mind. Don't waste your life hating him. That night, he lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling. Part of him wanted to burn the note and forget, but another part whispered that if he didn't face Edward, the man would keep hovering in the shadows, poisoning whatever peace Ethan had built. The next evening, he went. The riverfront was quiet, the water glinting orange in the fading light. Edward sat on the bench, thinner than Ethan remembered. His hands clasped tightly, as if he were holding them together by force. When Ethan approached, Edward rose. "You came. Say what you need to say," Ethan replied, his voice cold. Edward hesitated, then spoke. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to understand. When your mother got sick, I was drowning. The debt, the medical bills, the fear of losing everything. I didn't know how to handle it. When she got better, I panicked. I thought I'd already lost you both." And the lie seemed easier than the truth. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You stole a lifetime from us because you were afraid." Edward's eyes glistened. "I know, and I'll die with that guilt. But if you hate me until then, I accept it. I just needed you to know I wasn't trying to kill your mother's love for you. I was trying to run from my own failures." The river carried the silence between them. Ethan wanted to strike him, to scream, to make him feel even a fraction of what he had felt growing up alone. But instead, he turned away. "You're right about one thing," Ethan said. "You'll die with that guilt, and I'll live with the scars you gave me. That's all there is." He walked off, leaving Edward sitting alone as the sky darkened. When Ethan returned to the care centre later that night, Marianne was waiting, her eyes searching his face. She didn't ask what had been said, only reached for his hand. He held it tightly, silently promising her that whatever Edward's shadow cast, it would never come between them again. Winter crept in quietly. The garden at Riverside emptied of residents, the benches left bare under a thin layer of frost. Inside, the halls smelled stronger of disinfectant, and nurses moved with heavier steps. Ethan noticed it first in the way Marianne's voice grew weaker, then in how she tired after only a few minutes of knitting. One afternoon, when he arrived after work, he found her asleep in the common room. Her knitting lay unfinished on her lap, the yarn tangled in her fingers. Anna whispered from a nearby chair, "She's been like that most of the day. Doctor says her heart isn't as strong anymore." Ethan's throat tightened. He crouched beside his mother, carefully freeing the yarn from her hand. She stirred at his touch, her eyes fluttering open. "You're here," she breathed, her smile faint but warm. "Always," Ethan said. Over the following weeks, his visits grew longer. He began skipping shifts at the construction site, unwilling to waste hours that belonged to her. He read aloud to her when her eyes grew too tired. He wheeled her to the window so she could watch the snow fall. Sometimes they sat in silence, their hands clasped, no words needed. One evening, as Anna helped adjust Marianne's blankets, Marianne caught Ethan's hand. Her grip was fragile, but insistent. "Promise me something," she said. Ethan leaned close. "Anything. Don't go back to drifting after I'm gone. You deserve more than survival. Find a life worth holding on to. People worth holding on to." Ethan's chest ached. "Don't talk like that. We've only just found each other." Her smile was sad but steady. "That's why it matters. You gave me back my son. That's more than I ever dreamed I'd have before the end." Later that night, after she drifted to sleep, Ethan sat in the hallway, his head in his hands. Anna lowered herself into the chair beside him. "She's slipping," Ethan said hoarsely, "and there's nothing I can do." Anna rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're giving her what she needs most. Time, love, that's more than most people get." Ethan didn't answer. He stared at the floor, the weight of helplessness pressing down. A week later, Marianne suffered a spell during breakfast. By the time Ethan arrived, she was already in her room, pale and struggling for breath. The doctor explained her heart was failing. She might have weeks or only days. Ethan sat by her bedside that night, refusing to leave. Marianne opened her eyes briefly, her lips forming a single word: "Son." He held her hand tightly, whispering, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And he meant it. If her light was fading, he would stay beside her until the very last flicker. The care centre grew quieter in those final days. Nurses walked softer, voices lowered when they passed Marianne's room. Ethan hardly left her side. He slept in the chair by her bed, his head resting on folded arms, waking at every shift of her breath. Anna visited daily, bringing food Ethan rarely touched. She kept the room warm with her presence, talking gently to Marianne, straightening blankets, filling silences with soft kindness. Marianne's strength dwindled. She spoke less, her words breaking into whispers, but her eyes still sought Ethan. Each time he leaned close, she smiled faintly, as if his face alone was enough. One evening, as snow fell thick outside the window, Marianne stirred. "Ethan," she breathed. He clasped her hand. "I'm here, Mum." Her eyes glistened. "You gave me back my son. I can leave knowing you're not lost anymore." Tears stung Ethan's eyes. "Don't go. Not yet. There's still so much I want to say." Her fingers brushed weakly against his cheek. "No regrets. You were the best part of my life." Her hand grew still in his. Her chest rose once, then fell with a quiet finality. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ethan bent over, his body shaking with sobs he had held back his entire life. For the first time, he had known what it was to have a mother, and now she was gone. Anna placed a hand on his back, her own eyes wet. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The funeral was small, held in the chapel behind the care centre. Nurses came, a few residents who had called her a friend. Ethan stood at the front, staring at the simple wooden coffin. Edward appeared at the edge of the crowd, dressed in black. Ethan felt his anger flare, but didn't move. Edward kept his distance, head bowed, tears streaking his face. For once, he looked like a man broken by the weight of his choices. After the service, Edward approached slowly. "She was the best person I ever knew," he said, voice raw. "I destroyed everything she gave me. I hope someday you'll forgive me, even if it's only in your heart." Ethan stared at him, his jaw tight. "I'll never forgive you, but I won't waste my life hating you either. That ends here." Edward nodded, tears falling. He turned and walked away, swallowed by the cold air. When the mourners left, Ethan remained at the graveside, Anna at his side. The wind carried the scent of pine, sharp and clean. Anna slipped her hand into his. "She'd want you to keep living, Ethan. Not for her, for you." He looked at her, seeing in her steady gaze the same light his mother had carried. Slowly, he squeezed her hand. The pain would never leave, but neither would the love he had found in those final weeks. And for the first time, Ethan believed he could carry both. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.